to the Free Kick Podcast. My name is Todd, and that's a wrap on your 2023 MLS regular season. And finally, we have playoffs right around the corner, and this long, never-ending regular season has come to an end. And don't worry, there's still a ton of soccer to be played, and we'll see if the Philadelphia Union get to be a part of all those matches in your 2023 Audi MLS Playoff Series. And we'll get into that if you guys want. We'll obviously discuss the New England Revolution game that happened Saturday night on Decision Day. We'll go ahead and talk about MLS news around the league. We'll go ahead and talk about my 3 stars, or really only 2 stars on the night. And then blunder of the week. But there's a lot of disappointment from me. I think you guys can probably already tell in my voice. There's a lot of disappointment from you guys, the listeners, fans of this club. And I think it's warranted, right? Because the expectations for the Philadelphia Union are so high. There's nothing wrong with wanting the Union to be better than they were this season. But we can save that conversation for another podcast. This isn't going to be a review episode of the season. We'll save that for whenever the Union get knocked out of the playoffs. But like I said, we have some news to talk about from around MLS. So let's get straight into the news. All right, so the first bit of news, where should we start? Start with the Vancouver Whitecaps have announced they have signed head coach Vinny Sarantini to a new 2-year contract. Sarantini was hired in 2021, led the Whitecaps to the playoffs once again this season. And we're going to see, just like we saw last night on Decision Day, LAFC and Vancouver, those 2 teams are going to meet once again in the playoffs. But a really, really good season, I thought, this year from Vancouver. Finished in 6th place, 12 wins, 10 losses, 12 draws. 55 goals for, 48 against. Just a really, really solid year from Vancouver this year. After they missed out on the playoffs last year, they find their way back into the MLS playoffs since 2021. Moving on into Miami, head coach Tata Martino informed the media last night that Josef Martinez will not remain with the club next season. Miami had a contract option on Martinez, and there have been reports, you guys have seen it all summer long, that Luis Suarez was going to join Miami. Never happened in the summertime. And once again, those rumors have picked up and said that Suarez would join Miami in the winter, which means that Josef Martinez would have to depart the club. Josef had 7 goals this season for Miami, 1 assist in 27 appearances, and he made $4.3 million guaranteed this year for Miami. So for Union fans out there that may want to see Josef Martinez with the Philadelphia Union, not going to happen. Josef hasn't been the same player he was once he tore his ACL in Atlanta. It's part of the reason why Atlanta were okay with letting him go. And we'll see where Josef winds up next season. I'd imagine he'd probably stay in MLS, but I don't know, maybe he gets a shot back in South America. We shall see. And sticking with players that aren't returning, I guess we'll stay with 2 more. We'll start with probably the biggest one is Nicolás Lodeiro of Seattle Sounders. The 34-year-old midfielder is out of contract this winter. He won't be returning to Seattle next season. He won MLS Cup twice with the Sounders 2016, 2019, and he was a part of that Seattle group that won the CCL in 2022. And before Union fans say, let's sign him to replace Bedoya, no, no chance. Making a little bit over $3 million. Yes, he played 33 games this season, had 5 assists. But when you're making more than double of what Alejandro Bedoya made this year for the Union, absolutely makes no sense to sign Nico Lodeiro. So I'll be curious. Does he stay in MLS? Does he retire? Does he go someplace else? It's definitely one to keep an eye on. Kei Kamara also announced after his match with the Chicago Fire that he will not be staying with the club next season. He plans to still play in MLS next year with, yet again, another new team. And the last 2 players that are both leaving the clubs is Diego Rubio and Jack Price are leaving Colorado Rapids, won't be back next season, have been 2 of the more successful players of the last couple years with Colorado. And both of those players will be leaving the club. It's interesting. I think out of all the players that I just named, Diego Rubio may be the one that I wouldn't mind Union going after. I don't think they will. But for a player that made $714,000 this year, yes, obviously that's a TAM contract. It's a decent amount of money. It's a decent amount of money to be paying a player to come off the bench. I do realize that. But if you look at his numbers the last few seasons with Colorado, just last season he had 16 goals. This year I know he only scored 3 goals. Injured a good majority of the first half of the season. 5, 3, and 11 in his first season with Colorado. Is that a player that's worth taking a punt on? A player to come off your bench if you really want to go through the MLS route again with signing players? We'll see what happens, but that is it for players that are going to be leaving the clubs as of now. So let's go ahead and talk about some other MLS news around the league. We'll start with the MLSPA salary guide that got released during the week, the updated salary guide. So there's really nothing too different. The only thing that was worth paying attention to for Union fans was the contracts of Todd and Alawetu Makanya have been added to the website now. Todd is making $710,000 guaranteed, the 8th most on the Union, while Makanya is making $188,000 guaranteed. Kai Wagner is now the 9th highest paid player on the Union, earning $701K guaranteed. The Union are the 25th lowest spending team in MLS, a little over $13 million, but they are one of the highest spending TAM teams in MLS. 8 of the 10 lowest spending teams made the playoffs this season: Cincinnati, Real Salt Lake, Charlotte, Vancouver, Philly, New York Red Bull, St. Louis, and Orlando. And again, this is only salary spent, not transfer fees spent. So it's only what these teams are paying in salary. The Union, to nobody's surprise, one of the lowest paying salary teams, but they do pay a good majority of their players in TAM, one of the highest spending TAM teams in the league. And I think that's what makes the Union interesting, right? Is they don't have any superstars by any means. But they do take care of the guys. We've seen Jack Elliott, Jacob Glesnes, Jose Martinez, Jack McGlynn all get contract extensions the past few seasons. They've locked up key guys, players that have kept improving the last couple seasons, and they pay them high money in TAM. And I think as Union fans, the argument would be, all right, let's get more depth pieces. Let's get better depth pieces. Well, if you want good depth, you got to pay. And I'm not saying the Union need to get any DPs to sit on the bench. Because if that happened, people would be complaining. You obviously don't want that. You want to be paying your guys DP deals and expecting them to start. I have no problem paying TAM money to good depth pieces. It's what the Union were doing to Ty Baribo this season. And we all expect Julian Carranza to be sold in the offseason, which means Ty Baribo would slot into that starting 11. At least that's the hope. Maybe the Union surprise us all and bring in a DP striker in the offseason. But we can get into all that at a end of the season review podcast. But that's everything I want to bring up for the MLSPA. Again, just nothing really pops out at me. Nothing too different that we didn't already know at the beginning of the season when the MLSPA announced player salaries. Again, this is only salary spent. It does not include the transfer fees that these teams played, only the salaries. So let's go ahead and wrap it up here with the Golden Boot winners, the Eastern Conference playoffs. And as I'm recording this, the playoff schedule had just been released, and that was actually going to be Blunder of the Week. And maybe we still give MLS Blunder of the Week for the delay in the schedule. But your 2023 MLS Golden Boot winner is Denny Bawanga from LAFC with 20 goals, followed by Luciano Acosta with FC Cincinnati, 17. Yakamakis with Atlanta United, 17. Scored a brace last night against Cincinnati and a 2-2 draw between them and Atlanta. Cucho Hernandez, 16 goals with Columbus Crew. Hani Mukhtar, 15 goals with Nashville. And so the Eastern Conference and the Western Conference playoffs are as followed. The number 1 seed in FC Cincinnati will play the winner of 8 versus 9 and New York Red Bulls versus Charlotte FC. That game is this Wednesday. Followed by Orlando City and Nashville, the 2 versus 7 seed. Columbus Crew, 3 seed versus Atlanta, 6 seed. Philadelphia Union versus New England Revolution, 4 versus 5. Western Conference looks like this. St. Louis will play the winner of the 8 versus 9 seed in Sporting Kansas City versus San Jose Earthquake. 2 versus 7, Seattle Sounders versus FC Dallas. 3 versus 6, LAFC versus Vancouver. 4 versus 5, Houston Dynamo versus Real Salt Lake. And so, like I said, the playoff schedule I see looking on Twitter has just been announced. Haven't really got a chance to look at this too much, but we do know the Philadelphia Union's first game will be this upcoming Saturday, October 28th at 5 p.m. Philadelphia Union, New England Revolution, Game 1, 5 p.m., October 28th, this upcoming Saturday. And I think maybe I should just keep my blend of the week, and I'll explain why that is. Blend of the week here in a second. And then we know the next game will be in New England, Game 2, on Wednesday, November 8th at 7 p.m. That game will be on MLS Season Pass, FS1. This game, this Saturday for the Union, will be on MLS Season Pass. That's it. So, nothing too different if you guys have been watching MLS Season Pass all season long. Of course, you'll be able to watch these playoff games, but interesting stuff for the Union. After I had heard Wednesday, Jim Curtin told us last night that Wednesday, November 1st was going to be the first game. And now the league does a 360 and says game 1 will be Saturday, October 28th. So this is going to be a big game for the Philadelphia Union. If the Phillies win, they'll obviously be in the World Series. So it'll be interesting to see how many fans come out to game 1 in the MLS playoffs, with the Phillies being close to clinching yet again another World Series berth. But for other games, if you guys are interested, we'll go over that real quick as I'm looking at this. So the 8 versus 9 seed, New York Red Bulls, Charlotte, like I said, this Wednesday, October 25th at 7:30 p.m. And then at 9:30, we have Sporting KC and San Jose Earthquake. And then we go to Saturday, Union at 5 p.m. versus New England. 8 p.m., we have LAFC versus Vancouver. Sunday, October 29th, 6 p.m., we have Houston versus Real Salt Lake. 8 p.m., FC Cincinnati versus the winner of New York Red Bulls and Charlotte. And then 10 p.m., St. Louis versus the winner of Sporting Kansas City and San Jose. Monday, October 30th, 7 p.m., Orlando City versus Nashville. 9 p.m., Seattle Sounders versus Dallas. Wednesday, November 1st at 7:30, Columbus versus Atlanta. And then Game 2, Saturday, November 4th, 7 p.m., New York Red Bulls, Charlotte versus FC Cincinnati. 9 p.m., Dallas versus Seattle. Sunday, November 5th, 5 p.m., Sporting KC versus the winner of San Jose and St. Louis. 7:30, Vancouver versus LAFC. Monday, November 6th, 9 p.m., Real Salt Lake versus Houston Dynamo. Tuesday, November 7th, 7 p.m., Atlanta versus Columbus. 9 p.m., Nashville versus Orlando City. Wednesday, like I mentioned, 7 p.m., Revs versus Philadelphia. And then, if necessary, Game 3, I am expecting the Union and the Revs to go into a Game 3. Thursday, November 9th, we have LAFC versus Vancouver at 10 p.m. Friday, November 10th, we have Seattle versus Dallas. Saturday, November 11th, 2 p.m., Cincinnati versus New York Red Bulls or Charlotte. 4 p.m., Houston versus Real Salt Lake. 6 p.m., St. Louis versus Sporting KC or San Jose. Sunday, November 12th, 3 p.m., Philadelphia Union versus New England Revolution. If it is a Game 3, the Union will play that match Sunday, November 12th at 3 p.m. at Subaru Park. 5 p.m., Orlando City versus Nashville. 7 p.m., Columbus versus Atlanta. And then the conference semifinals, 4 games will be played between November 25th and 26th. Then the conference finals will be played between December 2nd and 3rd. And then MLS Cup presented by Audi, Saturday, December 9 at 4 p.m. So hopefully you guys are still with me. There is the playoff schedule. I literally just got the email, just look at this. So you guys will already have your thoughts well thought out. I do not, since we're recording this podcast as soon as the playoff schedule has dropped. But let's go ahead and talk about this New England Revolution game versus Philadelphia Union. And I think this game started out pretty edgy. I mean, the Union are living on the edge of their seat despite them scoring within the first 20 minutes of this game. You had Jacob Glesnes and Kai Wagner both making blocks with their bodies early on in this match. Too much time and space in the midfield for New England. Jack McGlynn and Alejandro Bedoya did not look comfortable at all together in that double pivot. And I thought the Union did an okay job making Carlos Heel passing side to side, squaring back. But there was also times where he could lift his head and pick out a really good pass, a line-splitting pass. And fans, and myself included, were asking for more squad rotation, asking for more squad flexibility. We want to see 3 in the back. And I think it's safe to say that the Union just don't have the players to play with 3 in the back. Jack McGlynn needs a true defensive midfielder covering for him, and that's certainly not Alejandro Bedoya. Glesnes constantly gets pulled out wide when they play 3 in the back. And there always seems to be some kind of spacing issue between Elliott and Lowe, and at times between all 3 center backs. And I understand the Union probably felt forced to play a 3-5-2 yesterday with Martinez suspended and Jesus Bueno and Leon Flock both coming back from injuries. But the Union can never play that double pivot with McGlynn and Bedoya ever again. And I guess that tells you just how important Jose Martinez is to this team. I don't think it's any secret that Jose Martinez is a top 5 player on this Union team. But I also don't think it's any secret that there's been major regression this year with this Union team. And I was talking with a couple of people after the game, and I said, you can see the clear regression from last year to this year. And so I think that's probably my biggest takeaway on the season as a whole. And you can look as simple as the standings from last year compared to this season, 2022 versus 2023. 2022, the Union had 67 points, 19 wins, 5 losses, 10 draws, 72 goals for, 26 against. 2023, 55 points, 15 wins, 9 losses, 10 draws, 57 goals for, 41 against. And it's interesting, too, because the 55 points that the Union got this year tied the second highest point total in Union history, which they set in 2019, where they also had 55 points, 16 wins, 11 losses, 7 draws, 58 goals for, 50 against. And I think the difference this year was, of course, they're better defensively than they were in 2019. You look in 2019, didn't have Nate Harriel playing as often, didn't have Bizo playing as often, didn't have Jacob Glesnes on the roster, didn't have Jose Martinez on the roster. You had Harris Mandunanen playing that 6th role, is not going to protect that back line like Jose Martinez is. So that's probably your biggest difference right there. It's interesting that the Union scored one more goal, though, with the strikers they had on the roster back then. Sergio Santos, Fafa Pico, Andrew Rutten was on that roster back then, right? David Akam, Kasper Shabelko. I mean, none of those names scare you, right? And they outscored the Union by 1 goal. And we can get into all of that stuff in a review episode. I really do not want to make this episode a 2023 season review episode. I don't. There will be a time and place for that. And be sure to get in questions, whatever you guys want me to bring up for that episode, when it's time, I'll be sure to bring it up. But ask yourselves this real quick. Which players have performed better this season than they did last? Only 2 players come to mind for me, and that's Kai Wagner. I think this year has been his best year defensively for the Union. And Jesus Bueno, though, is that very fair to say when Jesus barely played last year? But other than those 2 guys, I think every single player on the Union this year regressed. And I don't think that's harsh to say. I think that's fair to say. Andre Blake wasn't a top 3 goalkeeper this year in MLS. I mean, look at the second goal that he gave up last night against New England. That doesn't tell you top 3 goalkeeper. Yes, Andre Blake's very good, top 10 goalkeeper without a doubt in MLS. One of the best, sure, but not a top 3 goalkeeper this year. Jacob Glesnes, Jack Elliott, not 2 of the best center backs in the league. Bizo and Harriel, not top 5, maybe not even top 10 best right backs in the league. Kai Wagner is the only one that I would put up there with top 3 best left backs in the league this season. Daniel Gazdag, massively regressed this season. Yeah, I know he had 13 goals on this year, but look at all the penalties that he scored. Did he create as much as he did last year for the Union? No. Was that connection there with a front 2 this year? No. Mikel Ua, Julian Kranza, both of them regressed this season. Yeah, Julian Kranza had 14 goals this season, led the Union in that category, but he massively regressed. Mikel Ua, only 9 goals on the season. He regressed. The chemistry wasn't there between the front 3 this season. And I was talking to Kyle Almany today. Went to him and his wife Jillian's swim meet, swim coaches. If you guys don't listen to the podcast, I'm sure they've mentioned that quite a bit. And so I decided to go to their swim meet because they were in my neck of the woods, my side of town, for all you Killer fans out there. But yeah, I went out to that, and Kyle asked me, he said, what's the difference this year with the front three compared to last? And I think I said 13 goals for Daniel Gazdag. He has 14, my bad. Forgot he scored 3 from open play. 11 penalties, a joke. But yeah, Kyle asked me, what's the difference? And I said, it's a really good question. And I think maybe Jim and that coaching staff are probably asking the same thing. But I would argue, and Daniel Gazdag gave me a really good answer a couple weeks ago when I asked him how close this front three is to scoring more consistently. And he said that teams just know their runs. They watch film. They study tape. They know what the front three are going to do. And so if that's the case, which I do believe is the case, wouldn't you try something different? Wouldn't you make different runs, different passes, attack the space a little bit differently? You would think, right? I think the amount of games, sure, doesn't help this team. I think there's a lack of frustration with the Union not creating enough chances. I think that's probably part of it. I mean, it's just no secret that this team, offensively, defensively, have both regressed. There's nobody else on this team that's taken a step up from last season to this year other than Kai Wagner and Jesus Bueno. Can you argue Nate Harriel? Maybe, but there's moments this season where, he had a couple stinkers and you're like, okay, well, just when he's taking strides, he goes back to being average. Which there's nothing wrong with being average. I think that's what we get with the Union squad. They're an average team. Last year, and I know I've said it before on the podcast, last year was career years for majority of these players. And they may not ever get back to those heights. Last year was the year to win MLS Cup. Can they do it this year? Sure. I don't feel confident that they will. I guess the only positive is, and even Jim Curtin said it after his press conference, which I'm happy he said, there is no clear-cut favorite this year in the league. That's positive. Maybe you do get the sense that the 8th or 9th seed this year can go pretty far and start upsetting teams. Would I be shocked if Nashville upsets Orlando City 7-2? No, I wouldn't. Anything can happen with a best-of-3 series. Would I be happy if this team wins MLS Cup this year? Absolutely, but I don't see it. I don't have faith in this team. And I think part of that comes from watching the last 8 games of the Union, which has probably been my biggest concern. And the Union have dropped points from winning positions. They've done that in 4 of the last 8 games. First 26 games, the Union dropped 3 points. The last 8, they dropped a total of 9. It's not good enough. I mean, you got to figure, right? If the Union pick up, let's say 6 points. So that means that they would have only dropped 3. They dropped 3 in 26 games, and let's say they would have dropped 3 in their last 8. Okay, fine. It sucks, but it's acceptable. You put the Union at 6 points, and that puts them at 61 points. All right. Still not good enough to go in second place. Still not good enough to pass Cincinnati, but it gets you comfortably in third place. And now you're not preserving a 2-1 loss against New England, but a ton of drop points. And I brought that point up to Jim Curtin last night. And this is what he had to say.
Yeah, look, I think historically over the last several years, we've been really good at closing games out. Obviously, when you take a lead on the road, the chances are few and far between to get the second goal usually. So, tonight we conceded probably too quickly after we scored. Again, it's a little bit of a bad turnover that leads to a little bit of a fluky handball with Damian, and we get punished. So eliminating those mistakes is something that you really need to do in the playoffs. And I agree, we do need to get back to, when we get that 1-goal lead, not taking the foot off the gas, continuing to push, try and get the second, third goal. Sometimes is the best defense, but then also being really stable and sound defensively, not giving them a lot of looks at goal for the entirety of the 90 minutes. Plus, once you get into the playoffs.
Yeah, and I'm glad that Jim Curtin agreed that the Union can't take their foot off the pedal. They can't be comfortable with a 1-goal lead, because there's been too many times this season where I don't know what it is. They're timid. They're comfortable with a 1-goal lead. Why? I mean, you hear the saying, the best defense is offense sometimes, where you're just continually pouring in the goals. And the Union, there's been too many times where they seem comfortable with a 1-goal lead. And then teams come right down their throats and score a goal. We saw it against Cincinnati when the Union were up 2-0. There's no reason why the Union should have drew that game at Subaru Park 2-2 against Cincinnati. There's absolutely no reason for that at all. We saw it against Dallas. Union scored the first goal in that game. Game winds up being tied 1-1. In Columbus, Union score first away on the road. Game ends up being tied 1-1 because of a penalty they gave up. Score first goal against New England, give up a penalty. Union score in the 16th minute. New England score in the 25th. Which, by the way, I didn't talk about the goals that the Union conceded. Let's go ahead and talk about them here real quick. It's an absolute joke. That first goal that the Union conceded should never have happened. And I think that one pisses me off in that it's more annoying than the second one, where it looks like maybe Andre Blake slips a little bit and then the ball goes off his hands in the back of the net. The first goal, the Union have a free kick. Jacob Glesnes plays the ball into Jack McGlynn. Jack McGlynn plays a softball back to Jacob Glesnes. And New England pounce on the ball. And now you have the Union rushing back. Nobody's set defensively. Jacob Glesnes is out wide, stabs for the ball. All you got to do is contain your guy there. He stabs for the ball. He's passed. He's beat. And then Damian Lowe gives up the handball. I don't blame Damian Lowe for giving up that handball. There is no reason whatsoever. You have a free kick. There's no reason why you give up the ball on a free kick. A poor pass backwards. There's no reason for that. Absolutely no reason. So inexcusable. And then on the second goal, we see the Union going on a counterattack, and then they get counterattacked by New England. They play a ball up top to Carlos Gil. Midfield, nowhere to be found. Defense out of position. And Carlos just plays a through ball right into Gustavo Bo. He splits Damian Lowe and Jacob Glesnes because Jack Elliott goes to Carlos Gil. Because the midfield's nowhere to be found. It's a 2-on-3. There is absolutely no reason why the Union should get beat on a 2-on-3. But they did. But in my opinion, that first goal was a joke. You have a free kick and you give away a soft pass? You can't have that. You absolutely cannot have that. Yeah, you want to make these little simple mental mistakes at the beginning of the year? Fine. But with playoffs approaching, you've got to clean that up. That is totally inexcusable. But the Union make the mistakes last night. And New England, a team that had lost 3 straight games, finally get a win. And how are you guys feeling? Not confident. That's for sure. You guys aren't feeling confident. What about the Union testing Jacob Jackson, the goalkeeper for New England? Only his second ever start in MLS. Only 3 shots on target the Union had in this game. This is what Jim had to say.
Yeah, and in our building, I think those numbers will certainly go up. We played in a back 5 today without Jose being on the field. Jose will obviously be on the field in Philly. We can change our shape and formation, and I think that'll lead to a lot more chance creation. We knew what we needed to do today. We still wanted to win the game. But again, still maintain that top 4 spot, which is important for home field. But certainly, Teston Jackson, a young goalkeeper who did a good job, has done a good job for them, is something that is certainly on our radar. We have to make it more difficult on restarts, on things like cutbacks and crosses and shooting and from distance, and testing him a little bit more. Even the goal Nathan scores is a good example, getting a lot of bodies in the box. That one is another one where it's like, I don't think we really know the rule. There's so much gray, and you say, did he have an impact on the play? I always say all 22 guys on the field impact every play at every instance. So it becomes this judgment call where Nathan's clearly onside. Julian maybe jumps at a ball that's way over his head, and they make a decision that goes against it. So that kind of traffic, though, on that restart is a good example of what we need more of.
I'm so glad that question was asked to Jim Curtin last night. I've asked him a couple times about the Union's shots on target percentage being down over the last 5 years. I'm pretty sure he dunked on me during that question. He said, wow, it's a lot of stats you just gave. Well, it's what I do, Jim. I give stats. I enjoy statistics. And from here on out, I've been known as the stats guy to Jim Curtin. So I guess that's one way to get known. But only 3 shots on target against a goalkeeper that's playing in his second ever game. Only 27% of your shots were on target last night. The Union finished 24th in terms of shots on target percentage with 32.5%. Compare that to last year, where they finished highest in the league with 40.2%. The Union are taking such wasteful shots. And how you don't test a second game ever goalkeeper more is beyond me. You're playing on turf. It sucks. We all know. Can't make excuses. But you got to try those shots from distance. The ball's going to skip on turf. Why aren't you driving shots into the ground, hoping for a bounce that's going to get past the goalkeeper? You heard Jim talk about, crashing the box like we did on the goal that Nate Harriel scored, which was then ruled offsides, which, by the way, great finish by Nate Harriel. A little bit of a joke that was given offsides, but I guess I understand it because they call for goalie interference on Julian Kranza because he went for the ball. He was offsides. I guess he got in the goalkeeper's line of sight. And then terrific finish by Nate Harriel. Really, really good stuff. Unfortunate that goal was taken away from him. Look, he can score goals that don't just include his head, too. Terrific finish. If you guys haven't seen it, maybe I'll put that in the goals breakdown video. If that doesn't get blocked by Apple. Because we know the last couple times, I've not been able to put those videos up because of Apple. Thanks, Apple. But the Union have got to do a better job at testing the goalkeeper. They've got to get shots on target. They got to stop taking wasteful shots. We saw it last night. We've seen it throughout the majority of this season. They're taking shots from areas where they don't need to be taking them. Julian Crowns at 2 for 4 last night with shots on target. 50%, not too bad. Mikal Ua, only one shot last night. 1 for 1, shots on target. Daniel Gazdag, one shot last night. 0 for 1. But you got to generate more shots for your front three. And that's something that the Union have struggled to do this year. And when they are getting in shooting positions, it's not great positions. And that's a win for the opposition, forcing the Union to not shoot the ball in the green zone. Jim Curtin talks about that all the time in his press conference. Oh, we don't shoot from the red. We shoot from the green. That's when we're at our best, when we're shooting inside that 18-yard box. And the truth of the matter is we haven't seen a lot of that the last couple games here for the Union. And there's no excuses come playoff time. You've got to correct it. And how confident are you guys that the Union can correct these mistakes? I don't think anybody's too confident. People in the media aren't confident. You, the fans, aren't confident. The players and the coaches won't say that they're not confident, but you do get the feeling that something's off within that team. And part of it's probably the amount of games that the team has played. And I get it on one hand. Yes, you've just tied your second most ever points in club history with 55. Still a good achievement with 50 games played this year with Leagues Cup, Champions League, US Open Cup. But isn't it funny that we get told at the beginning of the season that, oh, we're going for every single trophy. Union get knocked out very first game in US Open Cup. Lose a semifinal in CCL. Okay. You can accept that. Win a semifinal against Monterrey in Leagues Cup, a team that wasn't taking that game serious. Okay. But then you settle for a fourth place finish in the league. It's a little bit unexcusable for me. I mean, yeah, you made the playoffs, but making the playoffs isn't good anymore. You've got to have trophies to show for it. And I realize 99% of your teams every season aren't going to win a trophy. But this has been a disappointing season. And maybe that's because of the last 8 games. But we'll see what happens come playoff time. Again, first game of the playoff, New England Revolution, Philadelphia Union, October 28th, this upcoming Saturday at 5 p.m. Quickly, we'll go to 3 stars. Like I said in the intro, only 2 players I thought somewhat impressed for the Union. Number 1, Kai Wagner, 3 chances created, 2 blocks, 9 ball recoveries. And isn't it funny, too, that the Union's goal last night comes from a chance created by Kai Wagner. A simple long ball over the top by Kai. Julian Kranze gets the goal. Mikal Ua gets the assist. Players are falling over the ground. Goalkeeper Jackson probably shouldn't have came out of the net to try to get that ball, but Julian Kranze is not going to complain. Gets his 14th goal of the season. It's going to be interesting, though. How do you replace your most creative player in Kai Wagner next season? Well, the obvious answer is you bring him back. Doesn't seem likely. We'll see, though. Though Jim Curtin did mention in his midweek press conference leading up to this game that he's optimistic that the right thing will be done about Bedoya and Kai Wagner's contract. I appreciate that, Jim, but I don't think Ernst Tanner feels that way. He's the guy that has to get it done. And if he's out here telling reporters that neither guy is going to be back next year, unless something miraculously changes, I do not see it at all. And number 2, Julian Kranze, 1 goal, 1 chance created, which isn't a great stat line, but he gets a goal. First goal in the game for the Union. But that's it. Nobody else in this game impressed. I'm sorry. Midfield was horrible. McGlynn and Midoriya, not good. Daniel Gosling, not good once again. Back three, back five, minus Kai. Nate got beat a lot of times on the right-hand side. Jacob Glesis got beat. Jack Elliott, Damian Lowe, they were not great. Andre Blake wasn't great in net. And so there you have it. Your 2 stars on the night for the Union. And then blend of the week. So I'll go ahead and explain this a little bit more in detail what had happened. So last week, I know myself and a couple other people in the media had started asking questions about when can we expect the Union's first playoff game. And people are staying tight-lipped. Nobody's telling us any information. And all we get in return is, well, these are the selected dates that MLS has scheduled for the different rounds. That's all we can tell you. Great. And so last night, Jim Curtin mentions in his press conference that in 11 days, we'll have our first playoff game, which would have been November 1st. The players for the Union confirmed that that's the day that they heard. People in New England start to confirm that that's going to be the date. And then Sunday afternoon, word starts floating out that actually those dates that everybody's confirming aren't set in stone. And then, like I just said, the first playoff game is official now, October 28th, this upcoming Saturday at 5 p.m. But for MLS to stay so tight-lipped for so long, for dates to be changed like that, it's not a good look.
Yeah, not good.
You don't look serious when something like that happens. And I don't know if it has to do with the Phillies potentially going to the World Series. Does it have anything to do with Houston potentially going to the World Series? And Houston being in the MLS playoffs? Potentially. But you would think that you would have all these different scenarios worked out. You'd have all these dates worked out. And the fact that you have players and coaching staff believing that the first game is going to be November 1st, and then that gets changed. I mean, it's just Bush League stuff. Totally unprofessional. Not a great look by MLS. At least we know when the playoffs are now. But it's got to be better by MLS. And maybe it's not an MLS thing. Maybe it's an Apple thing. But regardless, the ball was dropped. People have jobs. People have families. And people like to schedule things ahead of time. People don't like to wait until last minute. And that's exactly what happened here with your 2023 MLS schedule. But that's pretty much it for the podcast. So if you guys don't follow the podcast yet on social media, follow on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook at Free Kick Pod. Wherever you get your podcast, The Free Kick. Be sure to like, review, subscribe if you guys haven't yet. The YouTube page, youtube.com/freekickpod. Hopefully we can get a goals breakdown video posted on YouTube without Apple throwing a fit and essentially copywriting it, even though it's been no issue for all the other videos. MLS allows it, but for whatever reason, this time it essentially gets copyright strike by Apple. So hopefully it doesn't happen with this video, but I don't have high hopes for that. So if those videos don't get uploaded, that's why. But I don't know if we'll do a match preview episode or not this upcoming week. Kind of a busy week. But Maybe we do a Spaces episode. Maybe. Is that something people would be interested in? I don't know. Let me know. I told you guys where you can get in contact with me on social media or email too. It's fine. I mean, people still email. todd.lewis5@gmail.com. I don't know. But that's pretty much everything for the podcast. I know I've said that 5 times now. But until then, my name is Todd, and this is the Free Kick Podcast.